Hi, everybody. Welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. I have no idea what's going on right now with missionary work, but we have another one. Actually, not just one, it's three large baptismal events. And what led up to it was pretty incredible. In fact, I think a miracle. And I think beyond that, we're getting a preview of how things are going to happen at the time of the second coming when there's a large influx of new converts. I think that the church is starting to have like practical um, practice at doing this and how this may unfold. What I'm about to read to you is nothing short of amazing. We're looking at a map right now of Africa because Africa is a hot spot in the church right now. Um, I've added on to my Google Earth map, and these red place markers are locations where you've had large baptismal events. And this is not something that has always happened. I've done as much research as I can. I've searched church news archives and I've searched other places, and it seems like this is a recent phenomenon. Um, let's start with this. Okay. First, I know I've read this like a million times, but I think it's good to review. I want to read what President Nelson said back in November of 2018 in a social media post. He said, "We're just at the exponential phase of growth." And I do wonder if we're starting to get into that, especially with what happened last year in 2025. It was a record-breaking year for new convert baptisms. And Elder Rasband said that this year is far exceeding uh, the same point that we were at last year. Like this year's going much quicker. There's more baptisms this year. Um, and then I want to read something from Bradley R. Wilcox. He essentially says the same thing in two different places, one at an Ensign college devotional, but I want to read this one from a fireside just because I like how it reads better. He said, "But when the second coming comes, that's when these tribes, meaning the 12 tribes of Israel, are going to give us a totally different organization, a different level of organization that's going to become very important. I mean, right now, we've got to get organized because when Jesus comes and he says, by the way, I belong to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and that's what he's going to say. So do you think there's going to be a little interest in the church? Oh, yeah. Will we be ready to have 2 billion people join the church in one day? 2 billion people. Again, I don't know if these are actual numbers that they've talked about as they plan for the second coming. Okay, he says, will we have enough stake presidents? Will we have enough bishops? Will we have enough young women presidents? Will we have enough full-time missionaries? Will we have enough full tithe payers? We got to get with it. We got to get organized so that when we have that huge influx into the church, it doesn't swamp us. We've got leaders all over the world who can handle that. Okay, so with that as context, let's get into this story. Oh, just one more thing. I have a spreadsheet called Timeline Preparing the Church for the Second Coming. I have a list here, a timeline of things that have changed in the church that seem to be preparing the church for the future, whether it's after the second coming or whether it's a large influx before the second coming, which does seem to be happening at this point. So I have a list of changes that have been made in the church, but I also went through this kind of scenario where if after the second coming, I was looking at Dodge City, Kansas, just as an example, because I used to live in Kansas. At the time that I made this, they had one ward in Dodge City, and I looked at the total population of the city and just made the assumption, what if only 50% remain after the second coming, because there's going to be the destruction of the wicked. So like, what if it's 50%? And then I ran two scenarios. What if 70% of those that remain want to join the church? And what if 50% of those want to join the church? So in the 50% scenario, basically what you have is you would end up with one member of the ward to 28 new converts. But then when you look at adults, it would be more like one new convert per 70 adults. And if you were to look at Melchizedek priesthood holders, it'd be more like one Melchizedek priesthood holder to 347 new converts. So with that in mind, it, it seems that we're seeing this in a way play out. Like it seems like we're starting to see this. I came across this church news article. This is what I want to mostly cover in this video. How the gathering oasis in the Africa West area is flourishing 1 year later. And here you go. We have another one of the, not just one, but three large baptismal events. This article is by Trent Toon. Elder Ronald A. Rasband of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles dedicated the Abidjan Ivory Coast Temple, I'm just going to call it the Ivory Coast, quote unquote, gathering oasis for its rapid growth through missionary work and the members' deep commitment to temple and family history service. Ivory Coast is a gathering oasis, he said. Of all the people I've been around in the world, they understand the gathering here. Yeah, they sure do. More than 1 year later, Latter-day Saints and missionaries in the area are living up to that vision. In his final months as president of the Ivory Coast Abidjan East Mission, before being released July 1st, Pascal J. Budge reported rising temple attendance among members from neighboring countries who now have a house of the Lord closer to home. He also reported that through technology, I should have highlighted that, through technology, this may be a taste of things to come and how things are going to happen, you guys. He also reported that through technology and members' efforts, large groups of people were taught and baptized over several months in a growing branch in Bamako. I'm probably not pronouncing that right. The capital of Mali, north of Ivory Coast. I don't know how to say that in French. North of Ivory Coast. You guys, when I was on my mission in Spain, we were not just teaching Spaniards. We had people there from all of Central and South America. We had lots of Africans there, especially from West Africa, including Mali. And we did not teach a lot of people from Mali because, let's go over to the Wikipedia page for Mali and look at the demographics. Oh my gosh, zoom in and then I lose it. Because it says here, the 2022 census reported that 96.4% of Malians are Muslim. 96.4%. This country is the focus of this video and what happened. 3 large groups that have been baptized in the church. So 96.4% are Muslim, and then 2.3% are Christian. And then the remaining 0.7% are from traditional African religions. Okay, so the capital of Mali. Okay, Bamako branch. Elder David A. Bednar of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles went to Mali in May 2017, and the Bamako branch was formed in July of that year. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints received official recognition in Mali in January 2019. The church sent the country's first sister missionary to Democratic Republic of the Congo, and she began her service in June 2023. As of July 1st, the Bamako branch was realigned to the newly formed Senegal-Dakar mission. And I checked because you can click on this link, and it is one of the 55 new missions that were created on July 1st. So that is exciting. Okay, here you have a large group of people, 74 people dressed in white before being baptized into the church in Bamako. 74 people, and that's only one wave of it in this location. We're going to do a review of everywhere that we've seen this in just a little bit, just so we can kind of summarize what we've seen over the last couple of years. Okay, first wave. Budge wrote that for some time, Bamako branch members have encouraged people from three nearby areas, Farako, Mountogula, Diatula, and Nomi or Gnomi or something like that, to hear the gospel message. Okay, so earlier we were talking about technology, and more on that in just a second. But then members have encouraged people from these three nearby locations. So technology and members reaching out in a predominantly Muslim country. We, we just did a fast for religious freedom, and I wondered if it was something similar to President Spencer W. Kimball in the 80s, where he asked church members to pray day and night for doors to open for the preaching of the gospel. And at that time, we had the Soviet Union. About 10 years later, the Soviet Union fell. In this case, thankfully, the church is recognized in Mali, but maybe this is how things progress through the rest of North Africa and the Middle East. It has been inconceivable to picture how the gospel would spread through North Africa and the Middle East because it's so predominantly Muslim. But maybe this is a taste of things to come. What we're seeing right now in Mali, this is relatively recent. I know that 2017, like now it's almost 10 years ago, but it's still relatively recent. And maybe this is going to be a trend that continues. And look what's happening right now in Mali. Okay, so many showed interest, but it was not possible to send missionaries, Budge wrote. Okay, in February, Budge instructed Abidjan East missionaries to make contact with Bamako branch president Ibrahima Tagola and use online video chats to begin teaching those interested in the gospel. Okay, so a place that is inaccessible to missionaries, but now we're using this technology, online video chats, to do it. Okay, look at this. Budge oversaw the first teaching session remotely from the mission office in Abidjan. His second counselor in the mission presidency, Sari Kone, traveled to Bamako with the mission clerk to set up the technology so the interested friends could participate from the same chicken farm where Elder Bednar visited in May 2017. The first group, this is a video chat. So it's not a like couple of missionaries with a family, like one-on-one. This is a large group video chat from another country the investigators being in a predominantly Muslim country. The first group was so large, upward of 40 people, that missionaries split it into two and taught each group twice a week. The teaching continued for several weeks until the group accepted the invitation to be baptized with a service set for April 18th. Before that date, President Tagola arranged civil wedding ceremonies for several couples in the group so they could be legally married prior to baptism. While missionaries conducted 78 baptismal interviews, a tailor in the branch measured each candidate, and Relief Society sister helped to sew all the white clothing. Again, this makes me think of President Nelson's exponential growth, because we might see more of this leading up to the second coming. And I would say almost certainly immediately after the second coming. If what Bradley R. Wilcox said is true, like if that's what the church is expecting, and I'm not saying that he's saying that it is, but if that's what happens, yeah, it's probably going to be all tailors on deck, just like this guy. And thank goodness that branch had a tailor, and that was probably meant to be. I'm sure that the Lord prepared that. But there he is, preparing these baptismal suits, baptismal clothing for this large group. The Fraco and Diatula villages are about 10 miles east of Bamako, and Nomi is more than a 2-hour drive to the north. Mission and branch members also arranged for transportation needs, including food and water for those involved. Before the service, Kone trained local priesthood leaders to perform the baptisms and confirmations, for many of them, their first time officiating in either ordinance. On April 18th, 74 entered the waters of baptism. 4 more followed on April 19th. Confirmations were performed in 2 different rooms. Thanks to careful planning and support by the members, all ordinances were completed in less than 4 hours. Let's go back to my spreadsheet called Timeline Preparing the Church for the Second Coming. Of all these changes, I've noticed that there are some of these changes that seem, I don't know if this is some of these changes seem to free up priesthood leaders. Okay. You may look at it in a different light, but I think that you can hit multiple birds with just one stone. And so there may be benefits to some of these changes now, but there could also be long range benefits, such as at the time of the second coming and when there's a large influx. So if you have Dodge City, Kansas, or any city where there's a ward or a branch, the especially the Melchizedek priesthood holders may be overwhelmed by having to just perform all these baptisms and confirmations. Excuse me. And so some of the things that may help with that, for example, I'm just going to point to one, had to do with how, where is it? Yeah. So back in 2019, women, youth, and children may now serve as witnesses of sealing and baptismal ordinances. That would be really helpful if, like, day and night, you're working at baptizing and confirming and doing temple ordinances for 2 billion people, right? So it may have to do with that. I don't know. But this is how it happened here. Thankfully, they were able to do it in a short amount of time. But it may be all hands on deck immediately after the second coming. On April 19th, 45 of the male candidates were interviewed and received the Aaronic priesthood. It was a quote unquote historic and significant event for the branch, said Budge. Well, and for the church too, I'd say. Noting the following. Number 1, all contacts were made by the members. Young missionaries have not been in Mali for 3 years. That is incredible. That is a miracle. I'd like to see stuff like that happen here in the United States or in the West or just anywhere in the world. But it seems like you're only seeing this kind of thing like in Africa and Indonesia and places like that. All contacts were made by the members. Young missionaries have not been in Mali for 3 years. Number 2, each ordinance was performed by worthy local priesthood holders. Number 3, they weren't baptized by the missionaries. It was local leaders, and that may be how it's going to have to be with the large influx that is coming. Number 3, all teaching and interviews by young missionaries took place with the use of technology. That is just incredible. A second wave of 36 baptisms in the Bamako branch took place in May. Some of the men ordained to the office of priest in the Aaronic priesthood in the first wave of April converts participated in performing the baptism ordinance. Among the converts were 2 drivers hired to help transport people when lessons were being taught. So the drivers got in on it. Quote, they were so impacted by the lessons they received that they decided to baptize themselves. Butch wrote. Eyewitness to Lord's Hastening. Reflecting on the first 2 waves of baptisms in Bamako, Kone said it was a quote-unquote miracle to see how the restored gospel is touching lives in a predominantly Muslim country. It reminds him of Elder Razband's April 2025 conference talk in which he spoke about being an eyewitness to the Lord's hastening his work. Quote, I am watching it with my own eyes, he wrote to the Church News. President Nelson, he asked us in October 2024, Do we see what's happening right before our very eyes? Well, it looks like Kone is seeing it. This is him right here. Later on, Kone said the new converts are now learning about the temple. Quote, they have never been there, but they speak of it often. They are eager to attend and to experience for themselves what Elder Rasband called a gathering oasis. The Abidjan Ivory Coast Temple is more than 1,000 kilometers from them, or 621 miles, and yet it is already shaping their hearts. That, more than anything else, is how the Lord is hastening his work in Mali. Could you imagine having a temple in Mali? It's going to happen someday. And then there's a section talking about a third wave. A third wave of more than 50 people are being prepared for baptism during the summer. Well, I hope that this is a chain reaction. I hope it doesn't just stop at 3 waves, but something really incredible is happening right now. So I have a spreadsheet to track these events. It's called Timeline Missionary Work Large Baptisms. I had to find out, like, is this something that's like always happened? And, you know, because I don't know what it was. Maybe it was like last year. Yeah, I think it was last year. It just seemed like church news would publish these stories like every so often. And, I didn't really remember those kind of stories from before last year. So I was like, is something going on right now? The only way to find out is to put it on paper or on a spreadsheet. And like I said, I searched church news archives to see if they had done other articles like this. I've used Grok, and I've done Google searches, and it really seems that this is a more recent phenomenon. Not saying that there haven't been mass baptisms in the past, but it seems like there's an uptick right now. So let's see. Do I have any go? No. Okay. So everything that I have is in 2023. There were a bunch of these in Nigeria, and then in 2025 we had some in Papua New Guinea, Sierra Leone, Democratic Republic of the Congo, and now this year in Mali. And again, if you want to see that on a map, it looks like this. So we got Sierra Leone with 120. Here are the 2 so far in Bamako in Mali. And then I guess I'll be adding a third one once it happens. Excuse me. And then we got Nigeria. There were 100 up here in Mangu, and then 2 in a place called Makurdi, 110 and 37. And then go down to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and you have these 2 locations, 97 in Mwene Dilu and Kasumbalesa, 87 there. And then on the other side of the world, in Papua New Guinea, we have 129 in Jawaka, and then 107 in Oro. So something pretty incredible is going on, and I expect to make more videos like this. But let's pray for religious freedom, and pray for hastening of the work. And pray that what's going on in Africa in particular continues, and Papua New Guinea. All right, well, that's going to be it for this one. I'll talk to you guys later.